Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRD. And Brian Winnikins from the NAFB convention in Kansas City. Thank you to our NAFB sponsors, including Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, Amplify Health by Gunderson, Mondovi Clinic, Wisconsin Soybean Association and Soybean Marketing Board, and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association. I'm with Faith Parum. She's an economist with the American Farm Bureau Federation. And just in time, I figured we'd do this because just Thanksgiving just around the corner. Let's talk about the Thanksgiving dinner cost survey. I know that it's been high the last few years. What's it looking like this year?
Yeah, so the cost of Thanksgiving is looking down this year. So this is our third straight year of decline. So it's down 5%, which is a good sign that maybe we're easing off some of those dramatic highs of 2022. So the cost this year is $55.18, and that's for 10 people.
Okay. Were there big categories that dropped that helped lower the overall cost?
Yeah, so we saw some savings in turkey prices. We see frozen turkey prices are down. One is because grocery stores know people like to buy turkey during this time of year, so they're reducing the price and trying to draw people into the store. But also, as turkey farmers are facing avian influenza with smaller flocks and lower demand for turkey, that's just kind of helping keep a downward pressure on those frozen bird prices. On top of that, we see lower prices for some of our sides like stuffing, wheat, dinner rolls, and that's because we're seeing low commodity prices in wheat.
Talking with Faith Parnham, economist with American Farm Bureau Federation. Now, on that, let's talk about the farm economy. What I think, I know beef prices are really high, but a lot of times consumers don't realize that the farmer isn't getting 100%, not even close to 100% of that dollar that they're spending.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the USDA estimates that for every dollar spent on food, the farmer gets around 16 cents, a little under 16 cents. And so when we talk about high food prices, that doesn't mean the farm economy is doing great. In fact, we're seeing a very struggling farm economy, and they've had a past couple of few years, and it continues to decline. And while we're seeing maybe some upsides in the beef economy right now, that doesn't mean that they're making it. They've had a really hard couple of years that has led us to this point.
And overall, some of the things, there's so many different things at play in the farm economy. Input costs, but is it the trade issue? Because a lot of these inputs might be coming from overseas. Has that been one of the biggest drivers of this?
Well, we've seen input costs continue to increase over the years before the trade disputes really started. And so while that might be a factor, it really isn't the whole picture. We're just seeing an input cost increase year over year. And we're forecasted to have record input costs of 467 billion. And so that's just very hard to balance when we have such low commodity prices. And the Trump administration has removed tariffs on some key inputs, which will help relieve some of that pressure. But really, there's a larger issue at play.
How important is it going to be for the general economy to continue to try to move forward, not go into recession, otherwise it could adversely affect the farm economy?
Yeah, so all of these economies work together. We talk about the farm economy a lot, but it's often associated with the larger economy. And if we start to see instability in the farm economy, that could trickle down. Farming employs lots of people, right? So it employs the farmer, obviously, but then there's farm laborers. There are people who drive the trucks. There are people who work in the ports to fill up trains and fill up ships to send out. There's this whole supply chain that depends on the farming side. And so, that could ripple down. We talk about, the middlemen, packers, it goes to, grocery stores. There's all these different people that, come from this commodity that we all grow. And so we really got to pay attention to that as well.
Talking with Faith Parnham, she's economist with the American Farm Bureau Federation. As we are at the NAFB convention, I knew I was going to do that once, say Wisconsin Farm Bureau, but it's American Farm Bureau. The trade deals, and I've asked this for those that have watched or are listening to some of our other interviews. Know that I've asked this question to all of the farm groups. Everybody gets excited. Trade deal announced with Colombia. Trade deal announced. Whatever. However, it hasn't been approved by Congress or ratified by Congress. There is no trade promotion authority. So if it is going to be submitted to Congress for ratification, it's now subjected to 535 possible amendments from Congress. Is there a concern that all of these trade deals being announced really aren't a trade deal and there's more work to be done?
Yeah, so we've seen the administration really try to negotiate better access for U.S. ag products. That's reducing tariff barriers, but also like non-tariff barriers that keep American goods out of those countries. And so that's a good sign that they are focused on this. But you are right? There is some things we need to iron out, and we can see how they progress in the future and what the final negotiation looks like. I think the biggest thing we need to keep our eye on is, are these trade agreements enforced? And so it's very easy for us to see an agreement and say, okay, that's great, but we need to make sure that farmers and ranchers are actually seeing those purchases come through and seeing the benefit of those markets being opened.
And so that's the concern. Since it's not formalized, what is it? Does it really mean anything?
Yeah, exactly. And so we're continuing to advocate for farmers and ranchers in DC and letting our, administration and our congressional leaders know that we need the stability in the farm economy. These trade deals are great, but we need to know what the market's going to look like. Our farmers are making decisions 1 year, 2 years out, even further out if you're a specialty crop producer who maybe has to grow a tree. And so farmers need the stability to know what the market is and have assurances that they're going to have a place to sell that crop.
Talking with Faith Parum, economist with the American Farm Bureau Federation this morning from the NAFB Trade Talk. So we do have a formal trade agreement, USMCA, that is coming up for review. Are there things that Farm Bureau or yourself as the economist would like to see changed, or is the agreement working pretty well?
Yeah, so when they passed USMCA and all agreed to it, they put a review process in. So that means we're about to start the review process, and each country is going to come and say, here's what I think would help a little bit more for me. And that's a normal part of the process. So on our side, we're about to we submitted comments to the United States Trade Rep to let them know what we're kind of seeing. One is better dairy access in Canada. That would be really helpful for our dairy farmers. And the other is the enforceability metric again. And so sometimes when there's a dispute, it can take years to settle. And by that point, the farmer at the beginning of that dispute is already substantially harmed. And so if we think of something perishable, if a farmer wants to sell something to Mexico or Mexico is undercutting our U.S. market, by the time that couple of year review process ends, it's too late for that perishable product. The damage has already been done. So just making sure there's a quick resolution of disputes.
That is Faith Parum. She is economist with the American Farm Bureau Federation from the NAFB convention in Kansas City. I'm Brian Winnikins for WRDN.